Alright, so now we have episode 2 of Big Little Lies of the second season. And I think Telltale Hearts is the name of the episode. I would have done this video last night, but I may or may not have a rib out of place, and I'm in excruciating pain, so I will try to get through this as much as I can. Yeah, hopefully I don't lose track of what I'm saying. So, as far as it was Sunday's episode last night to me, I've noticed something right away where I was praising how much I really loved just the show in general, the first season, and then the first episode of this season where it was like, oh yeah, so we totally can take this to another through another season. And the great thing about that that I really should have helped my faith is the fact that there's only 7 episodes again, as far as I know, which I think I mentioned about the first season. But what I've also noticed that makes that so great after watching this past episode is that they do not do filler episodes at all. There is so much that happens in this second episode of this season. Like, this would almost be like a season finale cliffhanger of any other show, and it's the second episode of this season. Like, so many secrets and lies, like, came out of hiding. A lot of them that have been built up through the entire first season, all just dropped on us in this one episode, and all the characters also. And some new ones that we really didn't see coming, at least I don't recall in the last season, like, what Gordon's problem was when I talked about in the last episode, where it's like he's clearly got something that he's hiding, he's got something that's stressing him out. And then it turns into this whole, their riches are gone. And the interesting thing about that is what this is going to do to Renata's character. And the amazing things Laura Dern is going to do because of the direction this character goes. I got really hyped because I was late to the episode. I did see on like the trending list on Twitter the night the episode aired. Obviously the Big Little Lies hashtag was trending, but then also just Renata's name by itself was also. And my first thought was, what has Laura Dern done, and how has she reacted to whatever Gordon's problem is? And that certainly wasn't disappointing at all. And that's the thing also, is what I love about what Laura Dern does with this character, and the excitement of what we're going to see now. On top of just having lines like, I will not be rich, or the, I used to love sitting on your face line, stuff like that, is that we talked about in the first season, it was clear they were going for a bit of satire in regards to how they were portraying these people, while also there being a lot of reality in it also. And the thing about that is that Renata kind of seemed to be like the main sort of poster child for the satirical approach that the show was taking, where it seemed like she was the one that was kind of, we know that person, but it also feels like it's kind of exaggerated, but kind of not also. And the thing about that is that Laura Dern was able to create this with this character by really having not much more than the whole rich woman sort of character type to build off of. But she just made that so grand and so memorable that it really didn't occur to us that there didn't really seem to be much more to her character, at least on the surface. And now that we're going to take that away from her, I'm really interested to see where exactly the character's going and what all Laura Dern's going to have to work with, because whatever it is, I feel like this is just the beginning with this character, and she already took off the way that she did in this past episode, so that's going to be really exciting as it goes on. And then we've got the whole Perry being Ziggy's father thing coming up to a lot of people that didn't otherwise know beforehand. Just about every character in the show knows now, just like that. Because Chloe talks too much. We learn by the end of the episode that both of Madeline's daughters maybe talk a little too much, as it turns out. So with this, we have the first turning point, of course, is the relationship between Celeste and Meryl Streep. And the thing about this is that I was worried the first episode about where Celeste's character was going. Not so much from a writing standpoint, but I was like worried about her as a character. Because she seemed like she was getting clouded by these positive memories of Perry, or like I was saying, maybe even false memories of Perry, where everything just seemed really happy. And Streep kind of seemed to be getting in her head a little bit, and swaying her to thinking that Perry wasn't so bad and all that. But in this episode, she is clearly sort of come back, and everything's coming back to her about exactly what it was like to be married to him. And now she is lashing out in many forms. She's starting to somewhat stand up to Streep by trying to explain to her, in this very infuriating scene where Streep just isn't having it, what he was really like. And that's the thing, is the scene wouldn't be so infuriating if it weren't for the fact that Streep is so believable as somebody that just refuses to believe reality whatsoever. And then there's the whole scene when she lashes out at the kids when they're fighting. And she's saying right up front, because we were talking about the whole, what one of the kids was doing to Amabella means that whatever Perry had was probably hereditary. And Celeste is like jumping on this like right now to make sure that that is not going to be the case. And I really like the effect of this scene, because not only is it just sort of, we kind of see them fighting in the background and it kind of builds, but there's also the thing that they didn't seem to draw much attention to, and I was wondering if I was just seeing things or not. But especially since this show is so, like, anytime something relates to another scene, usually there'll be a flash of it, like almost like they don't trust us to remember. But the scene, well, no, I guess they do show this scene, just not in this moment. When the kids are fighting, it looks like they're at the very top of a stairway, which is a very familiar image. And if that's like a lot of what set it off also, and Celeste saying that she had to stop this right now and make sure that one of her kids is not going to grow up to be Perry, God forbid. And we're also kind of starting to explore the question of how is that going to affect Ziggy as he gets older, like how much of Perry is going to be in him, which is still this mystery that's kind of looming, and I'm wondering if it's going to show its head or not, because it would make sense, because as we were talking about in the first episode of this season, Jane seemed a little too happy, to where we knew, because it was nice to see her at peace, and that I guess Perry's death was able to bring that for her. But like I was saying with the dude that I guess she's going to start dating now, the self-proclaimed weirdo, which is one sign or another, where I was like, I was paranoid because I wasn't sure if, because of the luck that Jane has had, like the first guy that she sees in her life that she might actually like, I kind of like panicked for her. And it's like, be careful, no matter how innocent he looks, just in case. But it turns out that, at least as of now, that's not the turning point that sort of brought her back down. It's the whole Perry secret coming to light for everybody. And you can kind of start to see that happiness that Jane had found is starting to dwindle a little bit, and is it going to get, worse from here? Is it going to go downhill for her from here now? And speaking of that also, there's what's going on with Madeline. There's so much going on with Madeline right now. And that's the first thing I do want to point out, and I think I mentioned this in the last video, but it just bears repeating. I do want to make sure that, at least as far as I go, that Reese Witherspoon gets the credit that she does. Because it does seem, even though it's certainly an ensemble, Madeline does sort of seem to be like the one in the middle of it all, like kind of the heart of it, and where everything kind of seems to stem in one way or another, or at least not stem from, but end up at. And to be surrounded by so many, like, really big supporting characters, whether it be everything that's going on with Celeste, Laura Dern, obviously, and now the inclusion of Streep, on top of so many other things, it would be really easy for a character like Madeline to just kind of get lost in it. But the way she's written and the perfect way Witherspoon plays her, it always feels like she's just as front and center as she appears to be on paper. And her presence is just as crucial and has just as much going on, even if, like, she doesn't maybe have the problems that Celeste had with Perry, or that Jane had with Perry. But there's still all these things that just seem to be... Madeline seems like the person that... This kind of all started from the very beginning, from the very first episode of the first season, where Madeline seems like the completely and totally perfect type. Even more so than the people around her. And her downward spiral is just getting closer and closer to going to its absolute rock bottom. If she's not there already, maybe she is, but I don't know. She's reached a pretty down area, and we're only 2 episodes into this season. And with the way this show works, I don't doubt that there's going to be even more that happens. because there is the whole thing with Ed where I wasn't quite sure. I was kind of going back and forth with how I felt about Ed in this episode because, for starters, when the whole him being mad about not knowing about Ziggy being Perry's kid and Jane being raped by him and all that, I wasn't sure. Because, I mean, I don't know if it's like a marriage thing that I wouldn't understand or something, but he seemed like he was being maybe a tad whiny about something that it was. I mean, I get where he's coming from with the whole. Because it is kind of building up to it, and this could be a bit of a straw that broke the camel's back thing in regards to him constantly feeling shut out by Madeline ever since the first season. And even really before the first season even started, it's like we kind of walked in on their problems and Ed sort of feeling shut out by her, and like he's always at that kind of, he feels like he's out of his league with her, and it's the whole am I good enough thing. So it's like he kind of went into their marriage with a constant paranoia, which is coming to a head with just every new thing that comes up. So he makes a huge deal about not knowing about the Jane thing, and it was like, well, maybe you can settle down a little bit, Ed. And it's like, yeah, maybe, you would, if you settle down, maybe you'd realize that Jane maybe didn't want that news everywhere, even if, you're in a marriage with somebody that really knows it still. Maybe chill out and let things sort of happen. But then, obviously, we reach the end of the episode, and it's like, Ed says, we're done, and he walks out. And it's like, yeah, we've seen, and that's the thing, too, is that we've seen, that's what I love about the complexity of these characters, is we've seen the turmoil that affair caused in Madeline. Like, we've seen, the guilt eat away at her. We've seen her, like, delve into self-hatred. She really, really fucking hates herself that happened. And if she could turn back time, she totally would not do that. But at the same time, it's like we can't fault Ed at all for saying, yep, that's the end of this. So, which of course is where the episode ends, so we'll get to see more exactly where that goes, but it's like, if Ed were to walk out the door and we never see him again, well, as long as he, maintains contact with, Chloe, otherwise it'd be like, yeah, I guess we get it. It's alright, Ed. So, and I also like the kind of effect on that, the kind of adding salt to the wound that the song playing over the end credits is, I think, The Wonder of You is the name of that song, the Elvis song that he sang for her at Trivia Night. That was a nice touch, so to kind of signify the potential end of their marriage. Like I said, we got 5 episodes to go, and with the way this show works, a shitload is going to happen in 5 episodes. So what else do we have? We have the developments with Bonnie, where she seems to be much more on the, everybody's kind of on the downward spiral, maybe they're like Jane and they're at the top of a brand new one after being on one before. Maybe they're like Madeline and they're like right in the middle of a downward spiral that's been happening the whole show from last season to this one. And Bonnie's kind of starting to get on her own now, and it's obviously taken her to a really dark place. And I also like the whole, it's like a constant elephant in the room no matter where they are, because even if like nobody's around, I've noticed that it's almost like she hasn't quite come to terms with it, because it's been like a year, but we still have like never heard her say out loud that she's the one that pushed him and killed him. At least I don't think. Maybe she did in like a roundabout way, or a way that I don't remember, but it still kind of feels like she hasn't quite confronted it, at least outwardly, that we've seen. And then to, add more drama to her, of course, we've now introduced her parents. One of which is Martin Donovan, who is a nice surprise to see here. And yeah, it is interesting to kind of see that sort of pushing her a little more, and her relationship with Nathan also is sort of been interesting to watch in these past couple of episodes, where it's like, it's nothing that's his or his family's fault, but it's clear that something is totally wrong with her, and it's a matter of how that's going to affect her family indirectly, even though they have no idea what exactly the problem is and just how dark and deep that it is. If there's one thing that kind of I thought was a bit weirdly on the nose that I didn't care for, was the sort of, because obviously the show has had the flashy editing about it for quite some time now, since the beginning, since Jean-Marie Vallée was doing it his style and Andrea Arnold's kind of picked it up. The whole thing where when Bonnie is kind of getting into an altercation with her mom, and we see like the flashes of the water, and then they don't really explain till later what exactly that is, and it's like, in the moment, that's comes off maybe a little bit distracting and obnoxious. But once you know what it is, I suppose there's some artistic value to that. But I feel like there's a less sort of flashy way to deal with that. Maybe sort of a bit more of a kind of downplayed way would probably be a bit more emotionally resonant, I would think, as opposed to kind of making it look like the director's showing off a little bit. Yeah, so that's basically what I had. So there's a lot of things here where pretty much everything, like there's no story that's lagging here. Where it's like, and whenever, like sometimes if you're watching a show, there'll be a particular storyline that comes in and you're like, oh, this, I don't really care too much about these characters, I'm just going to wait for the next one to come around. Like, every new scene is a character that you're, like, extremely invested in and could be going in any direction at any time. And that's what makes this show so amazing. And like I said, the fact that they don't deal in filler episodes at all, and they have it cut down to a nice swift 7. There are so many shows that feel the need to stretch them out to a certain episode time, like Fargo. Much as I really like Fargo, I said about every single season, it did not need to be 10 episodes, maybe 8. But maybe Breaking Bad might be the only exception to this. But the thing about that is, it's like it's almost like they're sticking with the whole mini-series thing again. It's just, even though they're an official series now, it's like every season is like an individual, extremely long movie, basically. So I really like that style, and it's really obviously coming through with how much they have to put in each episode, which they do so smoothly, and like I said, so much comes to light, and it's just constantly leaves you wanting the next episode. So yeah, so this is a show where I was saying before, like, I had trouble imagining a second season after the first. Now I'm starting to think they could. It's hard to tell how far they could go with this, especially if the writing keeps up with as good as it's been. So yeah, so, and it's all characters worth exploring also, and all characters worth caring about. So to one degree or another, some more so than others, obviously, but still, if they keep you coming back, then that makes them worth something. So I think that's what we're going to have here. So will be very interesting to see what the next episode is, which once again might be a little late because I think on Sunday I'll just be getting back from, like, out of town or something. But it'll probably be like that Monday or something. So yeah, so until the next one of these, I think that's it.